There we go. Is that unmute? How you doing today, Ed?
Pretty good. How are you?
Oh, not too bad. Glad it's a Friday and starting to get a lot more sunny
Yes,
weather here in Washington. So
that's good. It's good to be
yeah,
back.
yeah, I'm glad to have you on again. Thanks for joining. I'm also glad that we're getting a chance to do. I think the topic that's probably least covered, certainly on this channel, which is the more of the Power Platform stuff. As some people were
Hmm.
mentioning as well, just with with this topic, Microsoft has a fun habit of moving the cheese when it comes to names. So what used
Yes,
to be Flow still has it in the somewhere in the system, but now it was used to be Flow, which had flows. Now it's Power Automate, which contains flows. So Flow still exists
right.
within the ecosystem, but it's now the entity within inside of it. But I still like I still think it flows better. No pun intended. I do kind of
Hmm.
miss the title of that back when it was in its first iteration.
Yeah, the problem though with a lot of the Microsoft names are it makes searching for things hard. So even searching for Excel and Access, you get
Yeah.
things totally unrelated because the words are just nouns or verbs, and Flow's the same way. So at least with Power Automate, it helps narrow your search results down a little bit. But
Yeah.
yeah, you still see it's a flow within a Power Automate ecosystem, so it's a little bit hard to get your head around sometimes.
The worst was M. Try searching for M. Yeah, in a Google
Yeah, that
search.
doesn't work at all.
Yeah, I
That
mean,
doesn't
thankfully
work at
now there's
all.
enough of it where you like M code, but even that still leads to some, inaccurate results, I would say. But as you're right,
Yeah.
like it's searchable terms isn't always the easiest when it comes to how Microsoft's chosen to name some things. Uh,
Right.
yeah, like as mentioned in the comment, like M language is a good way to search for that as well. But to start off, I think for today, I know you have been on the channel before. I'll actually, while
Hmm.
you're giving your introduction, I'll drop people to the previous talk that you gave back in November, I believe. But if you want to
Yeah.
give a bit of a little introduction on yourself and everything else, and then what we'll be going over today, I think that'd be great.
Okay. Yep. So my name is Ed Hansberry. I'm on Twitter. My Twitter handle is right there at the bottom of the screen. I am by background is I'm a CPA, but a few years ago I decided I didn't want to do accounting anymore, so I started doing Power BI consulting full time. And I've been with P3 Adaptive now for about a year. And I am doing nothing but deep dive into DAX and reports and firing up DAX Studio and really analyzing performance and things like that. So I'm really enjoying it. But there is a little bit of a world outside of Power BI, and it's part of the rest of the Power platform. So there's Power Apps and Power Automate. And I've written some apps in Power Apps, and I've done some flows in Power Automate. And I wanted to share with people today how they could at least use Power Automate to kind of take their Power BI workflows to the next level. You still do all your analysis in Power BI, but sometimes the best way to deliver that or get things going is to hand it off to Power Automate and let it do the rest of it. So that's what this is about today.
Excellent, perfect. And for those tuning in, like I did drop his previous link on skills to succeed in Power BI, which honestly, I think you've actually now done two talks, which are the less common ones, which is the soft skills, which I think is an important
Hmm.
topic, but not as many people talk about, and then more of the larger ecosystem in the Power Platform. I like to call it the friends who play nice with Power BI conversations, which is the all the other stuff
Right.
in the Microsoft stack, the Power Automates and Flows, which often either drop it into some other data source or location, set up an alert, or often integrate with a Power App as well. So I'm excited to see a lot of that stuff today.
Well, this presentation actually came out of the other one because someone, when I was delivering that to someone, another group, one of the comments I made in that discussion was, don't give end users access to the workspace. It's a technical area. They don't need access to it. You give them access to the app. That's what it's designed for. And someone said, well, I give them access to the workspace because sometimes they need to refresh reports manually. And I thought, no, you can use Power Automate for that. And they were like, oh, I didn't realize you could do that. And so that opened up a whole new discussion. And so that's kind of where the genesis of this presentation came up. This is not going to be a super deep dive into
Yep,
Power Automate. It's going to be, very surface level to kind of open your eyes as to what's
exactly.
possible.
And I'm looking
So,
forward to that. So
are we
yeah,
ready to get started? Okay,
Yes, there we are.
so I have a very simple Power BI report using Contoso data. So this is what we're going to be working with today for the most part. And this is what is in the service. So it's connected to a Contoso data flow, and then here's my report and the data set. And so the question is, the user has access to the report, but this is the type of report that they need to get updated when they need it. They don't want scheduled refreshes. Maybe it's a check report or something, and they write checks twice a week in their company, and they need that up-to-date information right before they write those checks to know what's going on. And so a scheduled flow doesn't work. Yes, you can give them access to the workspace. They can come in here, click the little refresh icons, but I think there's a better way to do it. And so that's what we're going to talk about today are some of these different ways to use Power Automate. So last year, early in the year, Microsoft released a new visual called the Power Automate for Power BI. So I'm going to go ahead and add that to the report. And this is not a very inviting user interface. You add this to the report, and it's this big screen that has a lot of text and a bunch of steps. And so it's not intuitive how to get started. They've got some help in here, and it helps you get started, but it's not clear exactly what's going on and what's going to happen with this. So what we want to do is we want to add a button to our report that simply refreshes the report. Now, before you get started, you need to make sure you're logged into the proper tenant, and this is mainly for consultants. Normally we say you only need to be logged in when you're ready to publish your reports because it's going to go to whatever workspace is in the tenant you're working in. But with Power Automate, it actually uses the login in the upper right to connect to the Power Automate web space for a given tenant. So you want to make sure that that's logged in correctly when you do this. And if you'll notice here, let me see if I can move this down a little bit. There's a little ellipsis button. And the first thing we're going to do is click on that button. Now you'll notice that the text here says add data to the report, set up your flow, apply and share, and then format your button. We're going to skip step one because to refresh a report, we do not need to add any data to it. We simply want to refresh. So I'm going to click the ellipsis here, and there's an edit button. So I'm going to click edit. Now we're actually logging into the Power Automate service.
Oh, so interesting. I think the screen might
Are you
have
seeing the
quickly.
right screen?
Yeah. So here's what we're gonna do. Because every once in a while this does happen, so people stay tuned. The Skype
Okay.
looks like it froze. So let's have
Okay.
you stop sharing and share again, and that usually will basically click it back in. Because I'm realizing it's still
Okay.
on just your
Okay. So I'm going to
data
stop
set section.
sharing.
Yep.
And so I've stopped sharing. Let me know when I'm good to reshare.
All right. Go ahead and reshare, and it should click in automatically. Let's see. Let's see if that populates
Okay, you
over to
should
mine.
see Power BI desktop.
All right. Always fun when you get a little
It's
around.
not
All
what I
right. So
see.
yeah, I'm gonna see if I can. Here we go. Let's do Skype, shared screen. Let's see if I can trigger it in. And for now, actually, until I do that, I'll just keep it at our screen. Let's.
Okay.
Yeah, keep your shared. I'm just doing a quick thing here. Come on. Why are you being grumpy? Alright. It is. Alright, we're gonna try one more thing. I'm gonna in the
Okay.
call. I'm gonna recall again. Go ahead and connect and share, and then hopefully that does the magic.
Okay.
First time for everything.
Yep. You ready for me to share again?
Yep, you can good to go. Okay, capturing over there. Now I need to go here. And then why are you being difficult? Alright,
Hmm,
well, try to see if I can hack this.
it's strange. It's
Yeah, I
got the red
know.
outline.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Alright, so I'm gonna try to see if I can capture with a different input. Alright, let's see. Alright, got got try, try the Yeah. Sorry about the delay, guys. Somebody's gonna go grab a quick bite, so
Technology.
I know, right? Well, it's the first time it's ever like legit glitched like this. Usually it's a quick little snap of your finger. So Stream Deck Skype 2. Let's try this one. Okay, so that one at least is coming through. Now let's try this. All right. The last thing I can do is I can also restore settings to vMix, but I really don't want to do that just in case it like does anything to the upload. Is there any way I can skip
You want
out
me to just
the
try to restart Skype on my side? Just kill it and redo it? Relaunch it?
what was that? Keep it up for one more second, and I'm gonna do a
Okay.
real quick thing. Hmm. Okay, I can. Yeah, go ahead and just close and reopen Skype, and let's see if that will get it. Worst case, what I might do is I can see if I can capture a portion of my screen and brute hack this today.
All right, so I'm restarting Skype.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, go ahead and call me.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
All right, and I'm gonna share my screen again.
All right. Change. All right. And all my NPIs, and none of them grabbing that. So okay. So
Hmm,
let's see if I can do a local desktop capture, and I'm gonna see if I can actually capture the. Okay, so it's going to be good enough. It is capturing a bit of the window with it, uh, but I
okay.
believe I can actually zoom in just a little bit on that, and I'll tweak that. But for now, it is a type of capture, and we're able to at least
Okay.
we do actually see it, and then I believe what I can do is I can stretch this out. There we
Okay.
go.
Now, I don't know if it's on my
Yeah,
side or your side, but I'm getting like an echo from your side. So maybe you've got two
I'm
microphones open somewhere.
done. I muted Skype. All right.
Perfect. Yep,
I
that's
will
it.
I will tweak and zoom in this a bit, but at
Okay.
least the process is working.
Okay. Cool. All right. So I'm going to re-add the button so I can show people what I'm talking about. So
Okay.
again, we're going to add the Power Automate button. It's this icon right here. And when you add it, as I was saying, it's not the most user-friendly looking visual. It's not what you're used to, right? You're used to seeing a bar chart or something, and you start dragging in fields. Uh, but this operates a little bit differently. So I'm going to move it down here. What you do is you click on this ellipsis button, and we're going to hit Edit. And this actually launches me into Power Automate in the tenant that I'm logged in. So you see up here, it says Ed Hansberry. This is my personal tenant. So I can go in here and
Yep.
that's what I'm logged into. So that's the comment I was saying earlier. If you're a consultant, be sure you're logged into the correct place in Power BI before you start this process. Otherwise, it's like publishing a report in the wrong workspace. Not that I've ever done that, but I'm sure I've heard of people doing that. So what I want to do is I just want to create a new flow, and I want it to be an instant cloud flow, which means there's going to be some sort of trigger, and it automatically creates this button that says Power BI button clicked. So I can say new step. What do I want to do when this button is clicked? Power BI. And here I can see all of the things that a Power BI button can do. So there's triggers and actions. This is the trigger. There's one trigger per flow as a rule. There can be many, many, many actions. This is going to be a very simple action. It is refresh a data set. So it's saying get the unique identifier of the workspace. I am logged in, so it's going to go through my tenant, find all of my workspaces, and it is Power BI samples. And then once I'm there, it goes into the workspace, finds all the data sets, and I can save it. So now I have created a very, very simple flow. And what I want to do is, the first thing I want to do is I want to rename it, because it comes up with these goofy names: API connection, refresh data set. And I'm just going to say refresh Power BI Contoso report. Okay. Now, if you've ever done anything in Power Automate before, you know that all you have to do is save the flow. When you're doing this in Power BI, you have to do two things. You have to save and apply. Save means it saves the flow. Apply means it attaches the button to, it attaches the flow to that specific button. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to go back to my report. I always hit apply again. It's like double saving in Excel.
Yeah,
I'm going to go
exactly.
back to the report. And now you'll notice that all that text is gone, and I have this huge button here that says run flow. All right. So what I want to do is, I'm just going to move it over here. I'm not going to make it pretty just yet. Actually, it's kind of hard to make it pretty. I want to go ahead and publish this report to the service and show you how this looks. So it's upload. This is a very small report. So hopefully this won't take but just a few seconds. And it's done. So now I'm going to go into the service, open my report. There's my button, and I'm going to click run flow. So it says triggering. Now pay attention down here at the bottom. You see this says March 6th of 2022 is the last time this report was published in the service. This should happen very, very quickly. It's a very small data set. Yep, so it's already done. So that's like a 10-second refresh. It's refreshed now at 9:18 in the morning. So it's very simple. So now end users can actually go to the report. We'll obviously make this smaller, put it somewhere else, make it look a little bit better. You maybe put it on a not a hidden page, but an information page or something on the back. And they can go in and refresh this report anytime they want. So I'm going to go back to the workspace here and back to Power BI. Now, again, to make this look better, you can certainly change the size. Move it over here. There's not a lot of formatting available. You can change the fill color. So I could say I want to make it a light gray. I could change the button text to black. So it's not so obtrusive, but it is what it is. You can't get rid of the little, the VCR play button, but it's very basic and it does what it needs.
I had a quick question. Of all the things that are
Yeah.
breaking today, I can't pop it onto the screen right now, but he was, and I think I missed it when I was tweaking the settings. There was a $5 deducted little thing that was shown on the screen. He was asking if that's how PPU
Yes.
works. Okay.
No. So what I did is in the Power BI tenant settings, there is you can have a message posted every time somebody does a report. And so kind of as a joke, I put in $5 will be deducted from your account every time you publish a report.
Okay.
So that's just me kind of messing around. You're supposed to, say something to the effect of, you should make sure and
Mm.
republish the app in the workspace or whatever it is. Okay, now let's go back and enhance this just a little bit. This report is based on this data set, but the data set's based on the data flow. So the data flow is what really needs to be updated because that's what's going to my outside sources. So by updating the report, I really didn't do anything because the data flow is not updated. So let's change this. I'm going to go back into Power BI. And what we're going to do is we're going to say, I want the button to update the data set. And then we're going to write another flow that's going to say, when the data set's done, go refresh my report. So we're kind of daisy chaining here. So I'm going
Hmm.
to go back to the flow, click on the ellipsis, edit, and we're also going to enhance this just a little bit. We're going to give users a little bit of an indication as to what is going on. So let's add a couple of things here. I want to integrate this with Teams. So what I want to do is get a mention token. So in Teams, when I could do @read and you would get a notification that I had posted something for you.
Hmm.
In in a flow, you have to get what's called a mention token, an @mention token. So I want to get an @mention token for a specific user. Well, since I'm logged into Power
Mm.
Automate through Power BI, I have a certain number of bits of information here that I can get from the button pusher. Their username, their ID, their email. I want to get an mention token for whoever pushes this button. And then I want to go into Teams, post Teams. So I want to post a message. I have to find it. Post a message in a chat or a channel. I'm going to post as the flow bot. So Power Automate has a flow bot that will go and post things as Power Automate Flow. I think that
Hmm.
looks kind of good, but you could do it as an individual user. You can integrate with virtual agents, which is yet another part of the Power Platform. I want to post it in. It's looking for, well, I can post it as a group chat, a chat with the Flowbot specifically. I want to post it in a channel. It's now going to look at all of the teams that I have access to. I'm going to use GNDN, goes nowhere, does nothing. And I'm going to post it in the training data form. And I'm going to say your report, or actually your data flow is now refreshing.
I like that you have a goes nowhere does nothing teams to drop
Yes, just kind of
stuff.
my,
Yeah.
just to play around.
Well, yeah.
And I could add other information. So I want to add the @mention token. So now it's going to say your data flow is refreshing and it's going to tag me in the team. And then I want to delete refresh data set because that's not what I want to do. I want to create a new step, data flow, and I want to refresh the data flow. And it goes through the same process. I go into the workspace, Power BI samples, and Contoso. Okay, so I'm going to hit save and apply. It says it's saving. There it is. Go back. Okay, so now my button will refresh the data set. How do I get it to refresh? I'm sorry, now it's going to refresh the data flow. How do I now get it to refresh the data set itself? So I'm going to go directly into Power Automate. So you can get there from the little waffle menu. You should see Power Automate somewhere. And this will show you all of your flows. And this is the flow that I just created. So I can see it in Power BI, I can see it in the service itself, etc. What I want to do is I want to create a new flow. And again, it's going to be a instant cloud flow, refresh, Contoso, Contoso report. I can't spell and type at the same time. And actually, the thing I need here is not available. So I'm going to hit skip because I want to find my own trigger, data flow. So I have a trigger called when a data flow completes. So this monitors all of my data flows. So again, I say the workspace. You might wonder, what is the difference between a workspace and an environment? There are Power Apps data flows that are in environments. Power BI data flows are in workspaces. So as
Gotcha.
long as you're working with Power BI, always go with the workspace. You get into the Power Apps thing, well, now you have to, okay, are we an environment or a workspace? So that's the difference. So for Power BI developers, you always go to a workspace. Again, the Power BI samples, Contoso. So when that refreshes, I want to refresh this data set. Okay, so that is done. There is no need to apply this to a button. This is not related to the button. It's a completely unrelated flow. But what's going to happen is when I push the button here in this Power BI Contoso report, it's going to automatically refresh the data set when the data flow, I'm sorry, it's going to refresh the data flow. When the data flow completes, it's going to refresh the data set. I can now go back into the Power BI report in the service. Okay, I've changed the back end. I don't actually need to republish the report. And when I hit run, it's triggering the report, sorry, triggering the data set. And you'll see here, I've got the little spinning ants. The data flow is now refreshing. If I go into Teams, you see that I have a mention. Your data flow is now refreshing. My name is in bold, so I got the notification. So I know that it's happening. Once it's done, I'm going to go back to the Power BI workspace. That is finished. And you'll notice that this report is also updated. It took 10 seconds. And if we look at the timestamp on the report in the service, you'll see that it's at 9:27. So I push the button, data flow updated, data set updated, everything's up to date. And we notified people in Teams that that had all happened. So any comments on that before I move on? I have a couple other minor things to show, and then we can move on to the next level.
No, no direct questions on that. Some people were. We had one comment just saying that it's. Matthias was saying he doesn't think it's good enough to reach the masses, and my counter to that is, I mean, honestly, like the vast majority of enterprise clients that I know use it for various things.
Mm-hmm.
The critique's more like the interface is complicated and clunky. It is. It's complex, but it also is because it's you're creating a flow process that can be 2 steps, that can be 55 steps. It's configurable for that. But at the end of the day, when you have a client asking for a request for an automation, they will never know what the interface looks like. They just need to know the
Mm-hmm.
results. So like it might be painful for the developer, depending on if you like the interface or not, but you're that one person who's creating a flow for 500 users. So that,
Mm-hmm.
none of them are ever going to know what the development process is like. They just need to know, can it be done? And if yes, use the system to do it. So, maybe there might be
Right.
ways to improve the interface, but as far as its versatility and robustness to do 1,000 things, it's a very advanced if this then that system when it comes to
Yes.
a lot of the automations, because it alleviates the pain of manual processes, and that translates to cost savings for a business.
Right. And I would agree. Of all of the three major Power Platform products, Power Automate for me is the worst one as far as the user interface. It's very tedious sometimes to get the syntax just right. I'm going to show you that in a few minutes. Um, but it's really just knowing what's possible. And with enough Googling, you can figure out exactly how the syntax is supposed to work. And then things start to click as to how that works. I want to mention one more thing about this button that we push. So this is the flow where we push the button. This feature you have to do in the service. Okay, so I have opened up the flow here. I could edit it here, and it would work. I could make changes. I could
Hmm.
add a timestamp to the message, etc. But what I want to point out is these are the connections that it's using. Now, the Power BI connection is no longer valid because the button doesn't connect to Power BI anymore, but it keeps it. I could delete it. It doesn't really matter. I'm connecting to the data flow using my credentials, and I'm connecting to Teams using my credentials, and I'm the owner. This is what's important. That button in the Power BI report will not work for other people until you share that with them as run-only users, okay? So I'm gonna hit edit. You can share emails, add members of your team to it, but the easiest thing to do is if you're using Teams, just add the team. So if I type GND in, now everybody in my team that is in that group will be able to push that button and it will cause the report to refresh borrowing my credentials. So if you're in the finance department, for example, and somebody comes into the finance department, they simply get added to the finance team. All the buttons or flows that are associated with it, it works for them. If they leave the finance team, it no longer works. So best practices, always share using groups, Active Directory groups, Teams groups, not individual email addresses if you can help it.
I did have a quick
Okay,
question from BI
yes.
Analytic, and you may have
Mhm.
answered it. I missed it, but the popped out on the screen here. Can you create a flow in a one report, but that points it to refresh a different report data set in the workspace? And I would think yes, because the flow can trigger anything, and then that flow button can
Yes.
be put in any report.
Yes. And actually, you could trigger multiple refreshes. If I
Mm,
were to go into this one, for example, and I'm editing the one where the data flow will cause the refresh, I can say refresh a data set. I can go here and just say new step, refresh another data step,
yep,
a data flow. So I could refresh 10 reports that are based on this one data set. So
perfect.
yeah, you're pretty much limited to your imagination. Um, Real quick, just to show other ways you could cause reports to refresh, I'm going to do a new flow, and I'm going to do this right here in the service. Again, instant cloud flow. This first one, manually trigger a flow button for mobile. So I'm going to hit create. I'm not going to go through the whole process. What this will do is I could add a new step, refresh the data set, refresh the data flow, whatever. If the user installs the Power Automate app on their flow, they go to the App Store, whether it's Android or iPhone, they go and they get the Power Automate app. When they log in, when you share this flow with them, they will have a button on their phone. They could actually refresh reports, data sets, whatever from their phone. They don't even need their laptop or to log into Power BI. So it's just another interesting way to get things to happen. I'm going to abandon that because I don't want to save it. Let's look at one other scenario. Let me go back to Power BI. And let's look at this report data set here. You'll notice it's not scheduled to refresh.
Hmm.
If you're refreshing using Power Automate, there's no need to schedule refreshes. You just have Power Automate control the refreshes. There's other reasons to do that. If you go into a refresh, the data set, and I go to scheduled refresh, I can configure certain things. I can do it daily or weekly. I can pick days of the week. Sorry, that's a time zone. If I added time, I could add, you're limited to 30-minute increments, right?
Hmm.
So if this serves your purpose, then do this. But if this is not quite flexible enough, consider adding a flow that schedules the refreshes for you.
Yep.
So let me go back into the flow. I'm going to say a new flow. This time I'm going to do a scheduled flow. So this is going to show me um, a flow that will start refreshing reports based on much more varied criteria. So I'm going to say rapid refresh start of month. So the scenario is this is a report for an accounting department. And during the month of close, that first week, they want this report refreshing every half hour or whatever it is.
Yep.
Um, but then the rest of the month, they don't care. Just refresh the first 5 days of the month. So I'm just going to leave all that as it is. I'm going to go into the flow and actually modify it. So I want this report to refresh every 15 minutes. I'm sorry, I want this data flow to refresh every 15 minutes, but I only want to do it the first 5 days of the month. Now, here's where Power Automate gets a little tricky as far as the syntax. I need to create a variable. So it's not like creating a variable in Power BI. You have to actually initialize a variable. So I'm going to look for the word variable, and I want to initialize a variable. So I'm going to enter the variable. It's going to be var day, and it is going to be an integer, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an integer that looks at what day of the month it is.
Mm-hmm.
So this little window pops out, and this is your expression editor. And you've got like 30 characters here. So you can have crazy long expressions, and it's in this super, super tiny window. So this is one of these things that Reed was mentioning earlier. The interface is not the best in the world.
Yeah.
What I want to do is I want to get the day of the month. So there is a function called day of month, and I want it to be the current time. So UTC now. So that's going to return the day of the month. So 1 through 31, whatever that is. Then I want to do a new step, and it's control, and it's a condition. So if my day is less than or equal to, let's say 7, we want this to run every 15 minutes, first 7 days of the month. After that, it doesn't need to run. The accountants don't care. If it's yes, then I'm going to refresh the report. So refresh data flow. This is going to be another data flow. Again, workspace, samples, and Contoso. And then if no, I'm not going to put any steps at all. It's just the flow is going to start. It's going to look and say, oh, today is the 8th, and it's simply going to do no, and nothing's going to happen. So once I save that, this report now is going to get refreshed every 15 minutes, the first 7 days of the month, and then it quits.
Yep.
Maybe add a manual refresh button. They can refresh it manually if they want, but that way, this thing is not refreshing 15 minutes every day all year long. It's only during that close cycle. So you can imagine that this is going to be far more flexible than the scheduled refresh in the service. So this might be kind of an extreme example. Again, I'm an accountant. This is something I would use, but you may have something else. There's nothing to run here. I just wanted to give you an idea of what else is possible.
And one of my other favorite ones, incremental refresh does it, but you can have it trigger when the data set changes. So when a new record is essentially written, or if it identifies new data, and similar in Flow, I believe there's a way to like identify against Azure or something else if there's any database changes happening in there, and then that can also trigger a refresh. So it's conditional on only refreshes happen when something new gets written to the fact table that you're pointing at. So a lot of ways to curb unnecessary refreshes and reduce server load. That might be
Exactly.
hitting it. And I think yours is a great case. I mean, I'd say that a good portion of companies typically have a period of the month when they look at the data more, and a large portion of the month when that stuff isn't looked at nearly enough, or even during the week. Like maybe every Monday, you want like 5 or 6 refreshes to kick off on that one day, and then the rest is maybe just once a day. But you go around the schedule of when people are more often keeping their eyes on the reports, and then you have an inactive kind of status the rest of the time for those refreshes. So I think this is a great example of the art of possible when it comes to those types of things. I did have a quick question.
Exactly.
Somebody saw one of the things with the Teams integration, and I'll pop this up again from the analytic. He likes the Teams notification feature. Can that be set up in such a way that it notifies report users through Teams only after their data set has been refreshed?
No, there is, to my knowledge, no trigger when a data set has finished refreshing, only a data flow.
Okay.
So unfortunately, we would have to wait for Microsoft to give us a new trigger. That is, when a data set finishes, then it's, hey, your reports have refreshed. The reason they did it for data flows is because they knew that dependent data flows or dependent data sets would
Yep.
also need to be daisy chained off of it. But there
Exactly.
isn't one that I found for data sets, unfortunately. So typically, if it's a long running report, I might say, hey, the data flow is finished. Check the report in 30 minutes. It should be done. So
Is there, because I know, like, I mean, as an example with goals, you can point to a specific column similar with cards and alerts, is when a number changes, do something. In flows, is there a way to fetch an actual value out of a data set of any type? Meaning, like,
uh,
can you look for, like, let's just assume you had like a number being returned that just indicates current date. When that number increases or changes, then that becomes the data set successful refresh trigger. So like that because I wonder, like, is there any other ways to identify a refresh maybe through a value changing in the model itself?
so if I go to Power BI,
Mm-hmm.
you can look at the triggers, and there's only about 7 or 8 triggers here.
Okay.
Um, there are data-driven alerts, so you can do that. Obviously, when a button is clicked, that's the one we do. There's a
Yep.
lot here for goals, so they've really ramped
Mm-hmm.
this up for the goals feature that you mentioned. But I don't know. I've never actually played with the data-driven alert, but I don't think you can do it when like a certain value in the report changes. You would have to
Yeah,
associate it with a goal, even if it wasn't a
exactly.
used goal, and kind of daisy chain from that.
It's one layer removed because data-driven alerts are, I believe, though that's the card on a dashboard that where an alert's triggered, right? I believe.
Yes. Yeah. Right.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
So that's the
That nobody
data-driven
uses.
alert. No, no, yeah. I mean, it was a very light version of goals. Goals eventually became
Mhm.
that, is you want alerts based off of value changes. So both of those can be set based off of a value in your so in theory, like, I bet you could hack away around actually successful refresh,
Mhm.
but you would have to set up an alert to somehow basically trigger every time a refresh happens, or you would have to set a goal to somehow also
Yeah.
trigger, and then from there you could point a flow to one of those to then identify. But it would be kind of an awkward workaround, I think,
Right.
based off of what I'm seeing there.
Yeah. So what I've done here, because when you said that, it reminded me. This is from the quote unquote dashboard feature.
Hmm.
So you would have to set up a dashboard. The dashboard has to be based on a card or a gauge, okay, because it has a single value. And then when the value does something, goes above, below, changes, you
Hmm.
can send an email or you can trigger a flow. And then you could say, okay, hey, this number has changed. But it is kind of a hack workaround because you have to add a card to the report, then add the card to the dashboard.
Yep.
It's kind of get into the whole Rube Goldberg machine, but it
Yep.
can be done. So
Yeah, I mean,
I
yeah, yeah.
really like the way of doing the goals better. I think goals is a really nice feature. So that's probably what you should look at.
One nice quick question, which I think is a really important one. I'm going to pop this up. Two people asked this. This I think summarizes it well. So the restrictions around Pro and Premium in terms of number of refreshes per day that can be scheduled in this service, would Flow be hit to those? So like if you refreshed every 5 minutes all day, would you eventually get an error saying like you've used your maximum refreshes on this data set?
Yes and no. If you're in a pro workspace, it
Hmm.
will fail after the 8th refresh.
Okay.
If you're in premium, it is not currently bound to the 48 refreshes that you see in the service.
Okay.
The only reason the service is limited to 48 is it's limited to 30-minute increments. So you can only
Mm,
set up 48 times.
gotcha.
Here, you could literally set it up to refresh every 5 minutes. And at this point, I don't think Microsoft is throttling that because it's premium capacity, whether it's premium
Hmm.
per user or per pure premium. So, um, so Pro is the only one you have to watch out for,
Good to
and that
know. Okay.
includes button pushes, anything like that. If somebody goes into that report and pushes a button 9 times in a Pro workspace, that ninth refresh is not going to work until one of those refresh tokens renews 24 hours later. So that's a great question.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect.
Okay, so we got about 15 minutes left, I think. Let's do
Mhm.
something a little bit more advanced.
Excellent.
So I'm going to go here. So this is a report. Okay, so again, Contoso database, not a lot of information here. What I want to do is I am selling products by state, and I want to send out emails to my sales reps to let them know that, what their end of month sales are. So I want a button that is basically going to email them the data in this chart. So I have created a measure here, just so you know what it is. It's simply a concatenate X. So I'm not going to go into the DAX here, but basically what I'm doing is I'm iterating over the sales table and I'm building what is my order number, product name, and the amount of gross sales, and I'm formatting it. And then here at the bottom, I've put this unicare, however you say that, it's for Unicode character, 10. That is it's either a carriage return or a line feed. Whatever it is, it's causing this break to happen. So it looks like it's formatted as a mini table here, okay? Now, this visual is not a visual you would ever show your end users. So you would create this visual and hide it. I'm going to show you why you create the visual. The visual they would be looking at would be something like this. But what I want to do is I want to email my California sales rep this information in this table format. So their email comes through and it looks kind of, good. So let's go ahead and start creating a flow. So I'm going to add the button. Now this time I am going to add data. So I'm going to pass data from Power BI
Hmm.
to Power Automate, and it is going to be fields and measure values. So I want to get, well, first of all, I'm just going to go ahead and add the order details. And it doesn't matter what order you drag them in at. So, and it just has one well here for your visuals. And then I want stores, I'm sorry, state. So I want the customer state, and I have their email address. Okay. So for every state, there's a rep associated with it that
Hmm.
has a email address to the sales rep, and then I'm going to send this information. You have to be careful what you add to this field well here, because that is the level of granularity that we're going to be sending the emails at. So here, every row is an email. So right now I've got 3 states selected. There's going to be 3 emails. If I were to go and add something like the order number to the data that I send to Power Automate,
Hmm.
visually what's going to happen is it is now going to send 1 email per record. Now the email is at the order level granularity, and whoever is in California is going to get 50 or 60 emails, which is not what we want. So you want to kind of keep what's in the visual synchronized with what you're doing here to help you understand what that level of granularity is. So I'm going to kill the order number. So we're back to the state level, and I'm going to kill it here. Okay, so state, email address, order details. Now I'm going to go here and hit edit. We're now ready to create our flow. It is a new flow, instant cloud flow, and again, it is going to be from a button. We don't need to do anything, and I'm going to say a new step. So I'm just going to do this very simply. What I want to do is I want to, basically, I'm just going to create an email. So this will be connected to Office 365, send an email, specify the email address. I want to add dynamic content. So this is information, and usually when you're working in a flow at a detail level like this, you want to hide all your panes here so you have
Yeah.
maximum information. There's 2 email addresses available. One of them is the user email. That's just who's logged in, who's pushing the
Hmm.
button. The other one is Power BI data. So this is the fields that I was dropping into the field well. So this is the email address that I want. When I did that, you'll notice it immediately created this apply to each section. So it recognized I'm sending effectively a miniature data set, and it knows there's multiple emails. So for every email in the data set, email address in the data set, I'm going to do these things. And one of them is send an email. I can specify the subject, your report for, and again, I can scroll through and look at the data. I have the state, so that's the state field. So now my email should come through and it say your report for California or Georgia or whatever. And then I can say, here is your report. Month, and then add the order details. So theoretically now this should be that block of text that looks like a table. And then I'm going to hit save. I'm going to rename that. Send sales report emails. Save and apply. Go back. I'm going to hit apply again. Go back to the report. There's my huge button.
Excellent.
Now, I can run this here. I don't have to publish this to the service to do my testing. So I just hit control, press that. It is now triggered. Now, it is only going through what I have selected. So it's honoring the filter conditions of the report. Because I have California, Florida, and Georgia here, it's only doing those 3 states. If I selected 20 of them or I removed the filter and everything was done, it would send out 100 emails. If I go to my email account, you'll see they're already here. Okay, these came through at 9:51, so that's just a minute ago. And here's my report for California. So it sort of worked. Your report for California, here's your report for last month, but it is just this horrible blob of text. It didn't honor my formatting. If I scroll up and look at the others, the one for Florida, it's a mess. It didn't honor the Unicode. This took me a while to figure out what was going on. And what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to troubleshoot that and then how to fix it. The best way to troubleshoot the issue is to do it inside of Power Automate itself. So I'm going to refresh so I can see all my flows. Here's my flows. I'm going to open this up. And you'll notice down here there's a run history. Okay, so I'm going to go in the run history, and it's going to give you a diagnostic of what happened. So I click the button. It did apply to each. It did a send to email. And it said, here are my inputs. And I'm thinking, well, wait a minute. That's a nice looking table. Why didn't that work? And then I noticed these little codes here, the P, the BR, and it occurred to me, this is HTML. And for whatever reason, Power Automate is either stripping out my Unicode character for the carriage return or HTML itself is ignoring it. So I'm going to go back to Power BI Desktop. And this is a DAX change. I'm going to change my measure. I'm not going to put this Unicode character here. I'm simply going to do /BR. Okay, and save that. Okay, now this looks horrible, but again, this table is going to be hidden. In fact, this table doesn't even need to exist. This is kind of a development table. You can delete this table when you're done. You don't need it. Now I'm going to run the flow again. Here we go. So that has been sent. Go to my emails. Here it comes, California. Boom. It honored
Nice.
the BR. So now that's a break. So, you know, you could get really crazy with this. You could pass this table to another function, convert it to an HTML table. There's HTML functions in Power Automate, put borders, etc. But it gets really detailed as to how that works. But you're pretty much limited by your imagination. It's just how much digging do you want to do to figure out the language, the syntax, things of that nature. I think we have time for one more quick enhancement to this.
Okay, excellent.
I want to keep track of when I've done this. So send sales report emails. So again, I'm back in Power BI. I clicked on the button to go into there. I'm going to edit this. Now, you'll notice I'm bouncing between Power BI and Power Automate as far as being in the service. Here's why you generally want to edit your flows in Power BI. When I go here, and let's say that I've got this enhanced, this dynamic content, the Power BI data is not visible when you're editing in the Power Automate service because it's not connected. But because I'm doing this through Power BI Desktop, it's passing additional information. So I can see the state, the email address, things of that nature. So that's why it's generally better to do it in Power BI.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to add an action. And I'm going to add, I want to add a row into a table. So this is kind of, Reed, what you were getting back at earlier, when data is changed somewhere, whether it's an Azure
Mm-hmm.
SQL, an Excel file, a SharePoint list, you can trigger a report. You can also add data to some of these data sources. So I'm
Yep,
going to add a
exactly.
row into a table, and it's saying, okay, where is this? It's in my goes nowhere, does nothing group. It's asking for my document library. I want to go and get that file. So it's in training data, Power BI sample emails. There is an honest to goodness Excel table in there. It has to be an Excel table. It can't just be a grid of data. So in Excel, you go into the table, add
Yeah.
table, it has to be a true table. And I've called it TBL log. The, so it opened up the table and there's two fields. And I want the serial, the date time, I'm just going to say in the ISO format. I want that to be the timestamp of when the email was sent, and the
Mm-hmm.
state, I want to pass the state value from, whatever's done. So Florida, Georgia, whatever we're doing here. And I'm going to hit save and apply. Go back, let that finish. Okay. Now I'm going to change my filters here. I'm going to do Berlin, England, and Hamburg, and run the flow. Okay. So now the flow is running. I should be getting emails here in just a second. Here they come. There's Berlin. So let's go ahead and go back. I'm going to go back into Teams because this is where my file is at. There is that file, Power BI sample emails. And if I have set it up properly, Teams is opening it up. This is what I was playing with yesterday. So what I'm counting on is this will get updated here in just a second as we're watching it.
Out of curiosity, is there like there's a Power BI
There it is.
ideas. Is there a Power Automate ideas at all?
Um,
Or Power
I don't
Platform
know because,
ideas?
yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I've never had an idea that I couldn't, wasn't a solution other than, there it used to be user voice because I do remember putting some a few years ago with how groups were handled, group emails,
Mm-hmm.
and it was on user voice. I don't know what's happened with that since Microsoft abandoned the whole user voice area.
Yeah.
But here we can see there's Berlin, England,
Yep.
and Hamburg. So now I have a log of all the emails that have been sent to my sales reps, and this will just add up, using Excel. It'll put a million rows on here before it crashes. So if you need more than that, look at something like Azure SQL. But
Yeah.
for most people, and you saw how easy that was. It's not a super complex thing. It's like Legos, right? You need certain blocks. You start putting things together, and it just works. So,
I had a question, which I think should be doable.
mhm.
Rafal asked how about sending a link to a Power BI report with filters in the URL to like various detailed pages. So, like, I mean, essentially it's a dynamic string. So I would
Right.
assume there's probably I would guess there's a way to build out that where you just have to grab the right components and then have that result in a string that's basically being spat out.
Yes, and what you would do is you go get your string, right? And there's a whole article on Microsoft's website about how to generate a filter in a string.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go to edit. And I'm going to go to my email section. So this is an HTML email, and there is a link here. You would simply put the link title and then that long string of email that you came up with. And then that would be the URL that the user click in the email and go right to the report.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, you can do that.
Okay, excellent. All right. Lots of good questions today. This has been good. And a very active, lively chat. I think we're up to, what is it reporting? 98, almost 100 comments so far. As
Okay.
people have been chatting a lot and answering each other's questions, and which is always nice in the chat. By the time I'm halfway through writing up the answer, another user is like, "Oh, okay, cool. You got this. All right."
Good. Yeah, it's part of the community.
Yeah, this has been great. I've learned a couple of things too, just about some of the integrations as well. One of the things that I like as you were doing with Excel is like it's really nice to be able to not only trigger an alert but also add data as needed for especially if you're doing any kind of a fast or slow changing type table, either
Mhm.
in a flat file or in a database. So many different ways to configure this out, and you know essentially build whatever possible business logic you might have.
All
All
right.
right. Was there any?
Anything else?
Let's see. I'll pop it back over to here. I think we're done for the demo at the moment. There we go. Yeah. If
Yes.
there's any other questions, then let me put the screen back up. Feel free to go ahead and drop them into the chat description now as we're wrapping up. I'm just reading some of the comments, but the link is dynamic. Uh, I think Pavin just had a kind of a follow-up question on the link that you mentioned there. So rather than a static link, can that link that you were just showing, can that actually be dynamic in the sense that the parameters in that link, which as you can specify filters and stuff, can that be made dynamic based off of conditions in the flow
Yes. Well, okay. So conditions in the flow, I don't know.
or conditions in the
Here's
data
how I
set?
would begin to approach it.
Hmm.
If you can create the link logically, I would probably create that in DAX so
Mm.
that DAX is generating it. It passes it here as a string.
Ah,
Then
okay.
you can add the string to the link, and that would therefore work. So
Okay.
that may not be the most efficient way, but that's how I would start the approach because Power Automate itself doesn't understand how to build that URL. Or
Gotcha.
maybe
So,
somebody better than me could build it
yeah.
using that. But I would build it in DAX because I understand DAX. I
Yeah.
just pass a string, stick that in the URL.
Actually, I think I'd probably do the same thing. I know very easily how to create a dynamic string in DAX and have it
Hmm.
spit that out, and then at that point it's just
Right.
URL equals this, and it's a very
Exactly.
simple flow to put that in. So good follow up.
Yep.
Let's see. I have another one actually that I'll pop up here. Let's see. So the question is, how can we automate the port distribution activities like managing permissions to databases or Power BI apps and things of that nature using this?
Um, so report distribution, you can blast emails of reports only if you have Power BI Premium. It does not work with Pro and it
Mm-hmm.
does not work with Premium per user. You have to have Premium. If you have Premium per user, there is a way to distribute reports using paginated reports, but I think you're limited to like 5 pages a minute or something like that. It's pretty throttled. When you're in
Yeah.
Premium, it's just it's an email cannon. Do whatever you want. As far as managing permissions to databases or Power BI apps, um, I don't think there are connectors in Power Automate to manipulate permissions and things of that nature. You're probably going to want to do some sort of API call and get that information via PowerShell. But even then, applying those changes, I would have to dig into it because now you're getting into the administrative side, and I think PowerShell is really the way that
Yep.
Microsoft intends you to do that.
Agreed. I think that like that's a good comment as well on premium and some of the distribution blast to individuals or any kind of Active Directory group as well.
Hmm.
Okay, perfect. I think that was. Oh yeah, the last one that I had. Actually, yeah, one other question. Kind of a
Okay.
technical question. It might be one of those that's like, the consultant answer. It depends if this doesn't have enough information, but let's find out. Uh,
Okay.
there we go. Uh, yeah, when I use href to hyperlink a web link, it works fine for the first few flows, but it seems like it eventually breaks, and then the only thing left is that it's just simply returning the string.
Yeah, that I don't know. That seems like a technical issue. I
Hmm.
would probably advise asking that question in the Power Automate community.
Okay.
Microsoft, well, first of all, there's a lot of experts there, super users, Power Automate MVPs, that could probably answer that more directly. But I do know that the uh, Power Automate program managers at Microsoft monitor that for them and will jump in. And if it's a bug, then it can be filed, and or they can say, well, here's how you do it. So that does get more technical, and I think the Power Automate community is the best way to get an answer to something that specific.
I also I appreciate his username or his user image, which is like thanking you
Hmm.
already for asking the question. He has
Yeah.
one other. Pavan had an
Okay.
oh, I actually pop this up. Here we go. And last one. Let's throw this onto the screen as well. So using Flow, I'd like to show the display name or job title to Power BI, but few mail IDs not having such files are getting. So it, I'm trying to interpret that. It sounds like an email wants to be sent that would show the name or the job title. Maybe if you have a follow up where you can explain that a bit more. I don't know if that was your interpretation of that, Ed.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, if you can get the data into Power BI, so if you have a user table of names, emails, job titles, positions, etc., you can pass that into Power BI. Then you can pass it into um, Power Automate.
Hmm.
But I'm not sure about the mail IDs not having such files. I'm not quite sure. So maybe if he could clarify the comment. But
Yeah.
basically, if you
Yep.
can get it into Power BI, you can probably get it into Power Automate some way.
Exactly. First step is just getting a hold of the data initially, uh,
Yep,
somewhere from your Active Directory or the database, and then at that point, it's usually easier to get it into Flow. Uh,
exactly.
okay, cool. I think that was. I think that's all the outstanding questions that I had queued up, or that was at the end. But overall, this has been great. Uh,
Great.
Glad we got through the the initial technical hurdle. It's the
Yeah.
first time I've actually had to create a new scene on the fly and then immediately resize and everything. So some people got to see how vMix actually creates some of those layered objects. But
All right.
you got to
I
wing
think
it
it worked out
sometimes.
okay.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like, but by the end, I actually got I fixed the resolution a bit, and it was nice and clear at least. So the demo still came through perfectly, which was good.
Good.
But
Glad
Ed,
to hear it.
overall, I really appreciate you coming on again. As always, you bring your A game when it comes to the knowledge of a lot of this stuff, and uh, I kind of like Flow for me is a bit like VBA and Excel. Like I know it well enough, but I only know enough of it that has ever serviced whatever products that I've been on. So same thing with Flow. I've dabbled in it. I've created a few interesting ones, but uh, I'm always appreciative when people can come on and do stuff like this, just because I learn a little bit more at the end of the day of some of the connectors, because there's hundreds of connectors in it,
Oh,
and that
hundreds.
hundreds of thousands of ways to use them in combination with each other. So it's
Mhm.
near limitless ways to do integrations.
Well, and
Yeah,
it's just a matter of looking up the syntax. And I don't want anybody to think I'm a Power Automate expert by any means. When I'm doing Power Automate, I have two browsers open, one for Power Automate and one for Google. Because
yeah,
sometimes it's just figuring out how does this thing
yeah,
work, or what connector do I use. So it's just a matter of finding the right pieces and putting them together.
exactly. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm sure we'll
Great,
uh yeah, somebody's like our imagination is going wild now, so people seem to really
good.
appreciate that as well. But
That's the
otherwise,
goal.
yeah, I look forward to having you back on again at some point for another cool topic, and have a great rest of your weekend.
Definitely. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
All right,
Bye.
cheers.
Bye.
Thank you so much for watching. Please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. And if you want to help support this channel, take a look at our channel memberships as well. And last but not least, please consider sharing this video on social media to help pass on this awesome content and to help the channel grow. So until next time.